Hey, I'm Grant Babbitt.
And I'm Steven Farnsworth.
And you're listening to It's a Dad Thing podcast. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of It's a Dad Thing podcast. Steven, it's been a while. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. It definitely has been a while. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. You know what? I'm good now. You know, it's funny. Every time you ask me that when like our show starts, I always am going like, yeah, I'm good. You know what? No, I'm not good. I'm dealing with some stuff, man. But no,
it's such an easy answer though, right? You're just like, yeah, I'm good. Because either you're talking to somebody in passing and you're like, listen, I'm not going to get into it with you.
Yes. And I have realized that I'm not one of those people that can do that anymore. I used to be able to just be like, yeah, I'm good, man. What's up? Yeah, what's up? Now I go, I'm not good. Let me dump all my problems on you. And I don't mean to, but you know, there's just a lot going on. There's a lot going on, and there has been, and you and I have been away from doing the show for the last 2 months. So we got a lot to talk about, but also, you know, it's kind of right now what we're doing is we're just recapping what's been going on the last 2 months. And I haven't really talked to you, and you haven't really talked to me, and I haven't really talked to a lot of people in general. I mean, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think of it as like I made some, you know, I was talking with a lot of friends when the initial stuff was going down, you know, when California was shutting down and we were headed back and all that kind of stuff. And then, you know, then I think it became everyone starting to focus on their own families and trying to figure out what all this meant and how we're going to get through this. And so it kind of was like a communication dark period, if you will. And I feel like now that it's just continued to stretch on, I think I've noticed that over the last few weeks, it's been other people reaching out and starting that communication starting to go back up of like, okay, well, I guess this is the new normal, the one we didn't want, but
yeah,
like we still got to talk to other people, you know. And so I've noticed I've checked in with a few other friends and, you know, started other dads I've noticed starting to kind of come out of that shell a little bit, but it's, you know, it's still very difficult. There's still so much information out there. It's overwhelming. It's a very overwhelming feeling.
Yes. I mean, speaking of overwhelming, yes, absolutely. I mean, you know, I had a baby, right, since the last episode. I had a baby in the middle of this.
A little thing.
Yeah, a little. I mean, he was a little thing. Yes, now he's getting real chunky. I love it. He's just a little. He's like a chunky meatball now, and I love it. He's gorgeous. Yes, my wife and I had a baby in the middle of all this, and actually, you know, it's already a crazy time because of what's going on with coronavirus, COVID, and everything else. But then, you know, between the last time we recorded and now, there's been a lot of stuff that's happened. Personally, there's been a lot of stuff, but then also in the world, there's a lot of stuff that's happening. And for us, I mean, there's a lot of stuff we can kind of touch on. The thing I'm gonna end up talking about first, obviously, is we had our son and the craziness that went along with that. So when we recorded it last, it was literally about 4 days before he was born. And I remember telling a story about how, you know, I went to go get my wife and her car broke down, right? And then we had all this craziness happen with the car breaking down, and then my car broke down. And it was literally days before we were about to have our baby. Well, 2 days after we recorded, and I don't know if I ended up mentioning this to you or not, but 2 days after we recorded that, my wife is just laying in bed. And again, 4 days before baby, 2 days after recorded, 2 days before baby comes. Okay. So it's crunch time. It's all that window of like super high stress. We've been under so much stress at that point because still to that point, we didn't know if I was going to be allowed in the hospital or not. And of course we had told the kids the whole time, like during quarantine, look, don't do anything too crazy because we're not getting a broken arm right now. So we have to go to the doctor's office. Like that's not what we're doing. We don't want to go to the ER for any reason. And in the middle of the night, 2 days before my baby was born, my wife wakes up and is coughing and then can't breathe. And I'm just going like, what's going on? She's doing the thing that I do because I have food allergies. So if I have anaphylactic shock, it's something that I go into, which is a really scary thing. Like if nobody's ever experienced that for me, my throat closes up and I can't breathe. I can't talk. There's very little to no air that's coming in and out of my body. My wife is sitting up in the middle of the night and she can't even make a sound. Like she just can't breathe. And of course I'm terrified. I said, do you need me to call 911? And you can't, if you're listening, you can't hear it, but my head is going nodding up and down. My wife nodded furiously and let me know, like, you need to call 911. I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure? I really have. So, you know, of
Did
course,
you not hear my speech earlier?
Yeah. So of course, you know, I call 911 and they're saying she's breathing, you know, and basically what ends up, like, the ultimate thing, what's happening is she woke up and was having acid reflux that was so bad that she was coughing it up, and that reflux was then getting into her esophagus and where she was breathing, and basically it inflames the esophagus. So it feels as though it is, it's closing. Like it feels like your breathing apparatus is totally closed. You can't get a breath. Now, ultimately, most of the time, yes, it will feel like that, but you can still breathe. It just feels like you can't breathe. I know this because it's something I deal with and I've dealt with since I was 17 years old. So for my wife, it's the first time she ever experienced it, and I am not belittling it in any way, because it was incredibly scary when it's happened to me and incredibly scary when it happened to her. But of course, here we are in the middle of night, about 2 or 3 a.m., and my wife has asked me to call 911. That means the paramedics are coming to our house. We have had no one in our house, no one in our house, with the exception of one person who had been quarantined, who a few days earlier was there watching our kids for about an hour while we went and got the van things figured out and then came back home. Other than that, we had absolutely no one in our house. And all of a sudden, here we are. The ambulance is coming. I have my wife sitting on the couch in the living room, and I trying to figure out if I'm a better husband if I tell her to go ahead and sit there and relax. They're going to come in and help you. Or if it's a better husband if I say, go outside, let them meet you. That way we don't have them come into our house. A horrible decision to be making, because really it doesn't feel like either one's right. Ultimately, I just wanted my wife to be comfortable, so I let her sit on, I just said, you just sit on the couch, it's fine. And then in our house comes about 7 paramedics. Yes, all masks on. But when we're in a house, all of our baby stuff that has just been cleaned is literally like sitting out all over the living room because we don't have any spot for it. So we're just like, okay, it's around the living room.
Yep.
And next thing you know, all this clean stuff ready for the baby to get here. And there's like 7 paramedics, which are frontline workers. And they're dealing with people day in and day out that may or may not have COVID. And that's a scary thing, and I know that like what they're doing is awesome. And I'm super, super thankful. But as a parent who's trying to protect my kids, who's in my house when I haven't had anybody in my house. Yeah. And then all of a sudden everybody's in my house and they decide, she does need to go to the ER. And then I'm thinking like, oh my, what is happening? I have 3 kids asleep in the house. Yeah. And here comes my wife, 9 months pregnant, about to have our baby, being rushed off in the ambulance to the hospital. And she didn't tell me until later, but they took her in through the COVID ward. Like what they had turned into the COVID ward, she had to go in because they didn't know if she was positive or not. And apparently while she was in there, she got tested a couple of times. Someone had said, hey, we should get her out of here if she's pregnant. Like, this is not okay. And so eventually they took her out. She was fine by the next morning, or by that morning, she was able to come home. We got a friend to go pick her up because, again, I have 3 kids in my house. And the moment she left, I just started cleaning everything. I mean, like wiping down everything, spraying everything. And I mean, the entire living room, the entire path of everything. And I mean, it was probably 6 a.m., 7 a.m. by the time I was like done really deep cleaning. And that's when it was time to go get her. So it was just, I mean, I remember setting up, I had to go clean. We didn't have car seats in the van properly because that was still a couple of days off. So what I had to do, because I was thinking I have to go pick up my wife from the hospital, is I have to go put the car seats in the car and, make sure that's all clean and everything. So I'm literally like in the car with my phone and my wife's iPad in here. And I set up one kid who was awake, set him up with a movie playing in my bed at like 6:30 a.m. and just went, if you need me, just talk. And he's like, huh? Just, I can see you, I can hear you. Just if you need me, just say, hey, Dad, and I'll be there. And I basically did a Zoom call, and that turned into my baby monitor while I went and set up the van for us to go. So, yes, that was my experience. Literally 2 days before we had our baby, and needless to say, yes, a little bit of stress. And I feel like, again, every time we get on here, I know it's been 2 months, but I feel like every time I get on here, I have some crazy story like that.
Yes, you do.
I want to get on here and just go, Steven, how are you? Grant, how are you? Man, I'm good. And not have a story.
Good.
I just want to not have a story.
The usual.
Yeah, it's fine. Everything is actually fine. Yeah, one of these times I think it'll happen eventually. But yeah, man, that was 2 days before he was born, and then we went on another adventure when he actually was born. So, fatherhood and the time.
I know, and you, like you said, the paramedics are coming in, and it's not like family came over, where you're like, okay, let's be safe, but it's still like kind of a fun time, and there's some. It's like a traumatic moment, right? And then not only that, but then she's pregnant, and then you have 3 kids, and you're like, is she going off by herself? Like, there's so many emotions going on at that moment, and I think that's what's for a lot of people, and I would say most people, that's what's been so hard about this, right? Is like that it's not like life stops. I mean, certain things like work and that might stop. But right. Life doesn't, like your wife's still pregnant, so she's gonna have the baby at some point. COVID doesn't really stop that. It's just like that's in motion, right? And your kids are getting older, and life is happening, and so it's been difficult for I'm such a planner that I'm always looking 2 or 3 months down the line, and I've completely stopped that because I'm like, I don't even know what to do next week. I don't know, as far as family goes and like normal planning stuff, even with like our homeschool coming up, we don't have to necessarily deal with like, is public school opening up again, or is the facility opening up? Yeah. But it's like, do we start at the normal time that we're doing, but it's like, there's so much unknown in the world. And I think that's where it's, I heard somebody say that, with COVID stuff, that usually life in general is pretty goes around like clockwork, right? So it's like you can assume that the bank's open from 9 to 5, or the post office delivers on these days, like you kind of take that for granted, but that's like your basis of like, no, that happens because that's what life is about. So then you kind of like create these variables in your own life to keep it interesting and change it up a little bit. And it's like all that's flipped now, right? It's like now, like, you don't know necessarily when stores are open, and they might have limited guests. You might have to wait in line for an hour to go into a grocery store, or you might not be able to go there because of your circumstances, and all this kind of stuff. That now it's all that stuff's flipped, and it's like it's way more chaotic than we're used to. And now everybody's trying to like do something to like slow down that randomness to try to create some kind of thing.
I'll tell you the great example. Awful example, really, but literally today, before we started doing this, I know you're, we didn't get into it yet, but you're a few hours ahead of me now, right? No longer in LA, but for instance, we're trying to get this set up so it's during the day for me, during the evening for you, and once a good time that'll work for both of us. And at the same time, I've been trying to get to the bank the last 3 days, or last, I guess, 3-4 days. So on Thursday, I think I tried to get to the bank. That's when I started this, right? Went to the bank on Thursday. I did a job for a company that was based out of Canada a while back, and just now I'm getting the check. And so getting that check, because it's from Canada, even though it's U.S. funds, I have to take it to the bank, and the teller has to do everything and override it and do it their own way. Can't do mobile banking. Can't even go to the bank and do ATM in off hours when no one's there. So I have to be there when somebody's there. And so I tried to go on Thursday. Turns out the banks close at 4. So I went around 5, knowing that they usually close at 6. And I think everything's been back to normal, right? So it should be open. They're not open. Friday, didn't get a chance to, because just being around the house with the kids and helping out and doing everything there, I was like, I'll do it tomorrow on Saturday, because I know Saturday they have the small window that they're open. Well, I go up there on Saturday, and it says the bank is not open on Saturdays. Okay, great. Bank's not open on Saturdays. I know it's not open on Sundays. So let me go on Monday. All right, I'll go on Monday. I know that they close at 4, so I'm going to go before 4, right? I get up there at 2 o'clock. The bank is closed. What the hell? Like, what? This is Monday. Your banks, you're essential. Why are you not open? Like, and nothing against the workers. It's just one of those things of like, you had just said it. Like, the things that are still going to be operating, right? And banks are one of them. Banks, post office, all those things. And I'm like, why is this closed at 2:00 on 2:00 on Monday? And I'm like, was there a holiday that I missed? I know I'm not checking the calendar, so there's absolutely could have been. But did I miss something? And now we're celebrating that. But no, I walk up there and there's a bunch of people, using the ATM, and then somebody starts talking about like, oh yeah, this is closed, and I think something happened here. I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going on. So I leave.
Right.
And I get in my car and I go, well, I got to go deposit this check because I can't do it on my own. And this is the only money I have coming in. So I got to go do this. And so then I look online, I find the other bank. Well, the other bank that we go to, which is close, is also closed. And that doesn't make any sense either. So I know there's one that should be open. It says that it's open, but I call and I can't get through to anybody. As I'm calling, I'm driving and I'm going and I'm like, whatever, I guess I'll know in a couple minutes if they're open or not. And I get there, I pull up and there's a huge line out front. I'm just like, all right, well, at least there's a line. Like, as long as I can make it through
this is the furthest you've gotten.
Yeah, I can do this. It's fine. And I go stand in line. And as I'm standing in line, people come through and they go, oh, can I help you? Do you have a deposit? Do you have this? Something I can do? And I'm like, no. I mean, I would love for you to help me here, but I don't think you can. I have a check from Canada. No, oh, yeah, no. You got to go to the teller. Okay, fine. And I said, yeah, I don't know what's going on, but you know why there'd be banks closed? Like my bank where I live is closed and the one close to that. And they went, yeah, there were some positive coronavirus cases there, and they're closed down for a little bit. And I was like, when? Like, when did that happen? Because I've been trying to get to the bank. So of course it's one of those things where like, yes, I know they're closed down, and that's probably because all the employees are quarantined because something was positive in that case. But that also makes you go through your head and go like, okay, when was I at the bank last? Was it within that time frame that could have possibly been within the last 2 to 3 weeks? And would I have been exposed already? Am I exposed now? Like, what do I need to do a test right now? And it's just one of those things that like, that's not stuff I ever had to think about before. And going to the grocery store, I know that everybody has masks and there's social distancing, and like we're trying to all be careful. You're washing your hands, you do all the things you're supposed to. But I think it's when it's like, there was COVID, and then it's like the whole country has COVID, and there's, but we've been at home. I mean, really, mostly we've been at home with the exception of going out and going on those food runs. I'm not working out of the home. I'm not doing anything else. So it's nerve-wracking to think that like one of the places I've been to now has been hit, right? And it feels like, even though technically based on the amount of people that are in the country to who has it, it's still small in that number,
right?
But it's a lot of people, right? Whatever the numbers are now, as far as what we're recording to when it comes out and when you are actually listening to this, who knows? But the point is, like, it feels like it's getting closer and closer. And I don't know anybody directly that has had it, but I know people who their people have had it. And, I know places where people have had it, and it's just like, it feels like it's just getting closer to the point where, not that it couldn't have already been there, because clearly we've been to the ER, we've had a baby, we've been to the hospital, like we've been around places that could have exposed us. But it's just one of those things, like it just feels more and more like it's creeping in. And it's like this level of fear, but also a level of like, what can I do other than just sit in my house? I mean, like, I still have to do some of those things. I have to go to the bank. Like, if I get this check, I can't do it from home. There's just no way around it. And there's lots of people that are working that can't work from home. Prime example, Steven Farnsworth. You, my friend, you're not in Los Angeles right now. So, I mean, where are you? Tell everybody what's going on.
I'm in this beautiful hotel room, as you can see.
Is that a Best Western?
Sort of, same style for sure.
I wasn't hating, I was guessing. I've been to a few of those. I'm just looking. All right.
So I'm back in Detroit. Our project got cut off in the middle of it. We're in the middle of installation, and once a certain point hit, the client said all clear. We've gotten the all clear from government personnel to have people back on site. The numbers are low enough here in Michigan to have that process start. And so I ended up flying out here probably about a month and a half ago.
Okay, so what was that process of flying, and how did you feel going through that?
It was definitely weird. I didn't honestly feel too bad because, you think airport, you're like, oh my God, that sounds like the worst place ever. But because they've grounded, so at that point I should say, they had grounded so many planes, and there were so, you know, I was flying Delta, they're still doing the no middle seats, and so I didn't feel too bad. I mean, everyone that I saw was wearing masks, and you know, it wasn't too bad, again, because like I walked up to security and I was like one of 3 people in line, you know, so, which is a very different experience when going to LAX. You know, you're used to being like, you're waiting for another, you know, 10, 15 minutes to just get through security. So it wasn't too bad, but what I found odd was some things, you know, now that they're like, oh, hey, we're going to start cleaning this and we're going to start filtering air more and that kind of thing. Some of that stuff you're kind of wondering, why didn't that happen before? You know, like one for instance for me was, you know, you're in security line and you put your stuff in a bucket, and that little bucket goes down the, you know, TSA security line or whatever, and then you put it away, and then you move on with your life. But they're there at the end spraying it down, wiping it down. And I'm like, I've never seen that before. Were we never wiping these down? Like, I just had this thought of like, you know, maybe we keep that one after we're done here, because that's kind of disgusting. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of those things that I think you see that and you're like, why didn't we do that before? Because either it wasn't thought about, or I mean, think about a business operating. Why would you spend extra money on that if nobody's asking for it? You know,
that's true.
And the irony of that whole thing is like, you know, I think like you just said, they're doing the no middle seat thing, but does that feel like redundant, or like these are the same places that like there used to be smoking section in the back and non-smoking in the front, but you're all in the same cabin? So like how I mean, how real is that, and how much of that is like a feel good illusion? Like,
I mean, some of it I think is a feel good. No, I think some of it is a feel good, right? I mean, it's now that there's no, you know, when I was flying and there was no middle seat, you know, maybe I'm not rubbing elbows with the person next to me, but I can just reach out and touch them. It's not like I'm 6 feet away, you know? So I think it was a lot of, you know, you're really aware of yourself. That's all I remember is like, you know, I sleep a lot on planes, and so, but I slept with a mask on, you know, and you're very aware of what you're touching, and you're constantly like wiping your hands, and they hand you like little Purell things. They don't do the normal drink thing that they do and like the snacks and all that stuff. That's all basically gone. So it's definitely a different experience coming out here. And then of course, you know, I'm working out here, and that's had its ups and downs as far as, you know, everyone's trying to figure out, like I fill out 2 questionnaires on my way in. I do temperature on all my team. I do all the contactless thermometer stuff. And
so you're the one in charge of doing that?
For my team, yeah. So for my for my team and all of our sub vendors, I mean, if it's interesting because everyone's kind of keeping track of their own team, but there is like a central person on the site that does it. I just kind of go around and ask, hey, did you get that this morning? And I'm just there to kind of make sure that it's happening.
Does anybody give you any grief for going through that process?
No.
I mean, okay, because I just,
not so far.
Again, I haven't been around a lot of people, but you know, I think about like productions, and productions are supposed to be open and opening up. And at the same time, like I'm picturing being on a set and most everybody being pretty cool with everything going on, but then, you know, 1 or 2 set members or whatever being like, don't you know, get a thing out of
there
my
are
face.
Definitely
like,
those people for sure.
Okay.
There, I mean, I would say there's definitely people that I have to, I mean, I've printed signs and I've done that, but they're not my vendors. But I have to constantly like, hey, can you ask your guys to put your mask on, or the chin strap thing, you know, where it's like, dude, it's not helping, you know. We're all trying to do this, and we've even gone to you know, have the mask, but because it's construction, you wear a helmet, but they fitted it to be like an actual full face shield.
Yeah.
But what's crazy is like little things that you don't think about, but like when I have the full face shield on, it takes a lot of energy to talk to someone because you're talking through a mask and a face shield. And so the whole time I feel like I'm shouting for most of the day. Right. And then even talking to other people that are here on site, you know, then it's like, you like wake up the next morning and you're like, I have a little tickle here. Like, what is going on? And you're like, oh my God. And you start freaking out. And then you're like, I think it's just because I'm straining my voice more than usual.
Sure.
Because everyone's like, huh, what? You know, like, and you're constantly trying to like be heard and hear other people. But it's very different than obviously anything we've been through. I'm constantly wiping things down and very aware of what's happening. We even did a client review where, you know, there's different people that are like you that have mostly just stayed at home, you know, like have not gone out, and there's other people that have gone out more. And so everyone's a little bit different on how comfortable they feel in that environment. And you have to respect that, right? Like you have to be able to say, you know, hey, no problem. Let's stay far away. Like we can still conduct this review and we can still do these things. We're going to make sure everything's wiped down. We're limiting the amount of people that are coming in, you know, all those kinds of things. But like, you know, that's what's hard also is that, like I said, life goes on. With my work stuff, we still have to work as if we were in before COVID, because that's what the schedule is. That's what everyone's agreed to, you know? And so this weekend I've worked the longest day I've ever worked in my life. You know, it's like, I actually worked for 26 hours. It was a 26-hour shift.
A 26-hour shift?
26 hours.
What are you doing for 26 hours?
So we had 15 people there on site of our team. And it's audio, it's video, it's lighting, it's control and programming teams, and it's where everything comes together. So the shows we create is like a theater show experience, kind of think like a small Disney experience. And so everything has been working on its own, right? So the audio mixers and all that, you know, have been creating all their stuff by themselves, but now this is the point that everything needs to sync. Everything needs, you know, the doors need to open while the light hits at the right time and the sound hits, and then you're able to go in through the theater. So of course, when you're doing all of that, I wouldn't say you hit problems, but you hit little like interesting, like, oh, that's off. Why is that off? And so you have all these guys there and girls that are trying to get everything to work together. And it's normally a long time where we have multiple shifts. But the way it worked out for me is that I was having to cover multiple shifts, just for various reasons I don't want to get on here, but I had to be there like earlier than most people because these people, you know, were coming to do a couple extra things before they got on a flight and went back. And then another team arrived a couple hours after them, and you know what I mean? And they're all doing shifts because I'm trying to keep them all working to finish our goal of like, hey, we have a client review on Sunday morning. Like we have to have this up and ready. There's not really an alternative.
Right.
And so, but it's, you know, so you're doing that. And then in the middle of it, you're like, but there's a global pandemic. Like, this feels so weird, you know? And I think, you know, Sarah and the kids go ahead.
Oh, no. I just say, it just feels like if you're up for 26 hours plus, I feel like you're really testing your immune system at that point. Cause I mean, you know, I'm having a hard time not getting a full night's sleep because of the kids and the baby and stuff like that. But I mean, not like that. I'm not putting in 26 hours of work and I'm in a different place and I'm, you know, out and around people. So it just seems like that would be something you would, don't be wrong. I just feel like it would take into some consideration. Like that doesn't seem like a very safe working environment.
And I think that's, you know, for, you know, not necessarily dad related, but I think that's part of my frustration with kind of what's been happening with COVID is that I do think that people are being that for the most part, I should say, people are being responsible and are kind of thinking through how they can do what they need to do in order to try to stay safe with whatever information that we currently have.
Sure.
But what's driving a lot of this is money. You know, it's like kind of one of those things where you follow the money. You know, why does a business stay open, or, you know, people have to come back to the factory or whatever? It's because they got to sell cars. It's because they got to sell the widget, you know, and the business isn't going to survive if they don't sell the widget. You know, like even the museum that we're working for right now, they were closed for, I think, 4 months to the public. But they have to reopen. They have to get they have to generate some kind of revenue, because right now their losses are so great.
Right.
that if they don't, they have a possibility of the museum having to close or do something very drastic. And they've, and it's one of those things where it's like, yes, they furloughed people, they've done what normal, businesses are doing, to try to kind of, stop the bleeding. But that's what's hard, right? Is like, we're doing this like state by state thing, and it feels all disjointed. So then what ends up happening is some of these things have to stay closed for longer, or they have to take a longer, more drastic measure in order to survive. And so that's, again, it's like kind of one of those things where we're all pushing ourselves to this client review. So then this week, like I literally came home, I think I texted you, I was like, I'm going to take a nap before this call.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm barely functioning at this point. And so now it's like, okay, well, I'm taking care of, a lot of people, they push through because they're all on flights back home today. They all left around noon on flights back. So they're home now, they rest, they do their thing. But yeah, it's not sustainable. It's not something that we really want to be doing. And for this podcast, as far as your family goes, like, you still got to strike some kind of work-life balance. And sometimes that gets off even during this pandemic. So for me, like the last week, it's been 99% work, and I think that will start to kind of go back a little bit, but it's been tough, and like we've talked about earlier, not only is it COVID stuff, but there's a lot of social justice issues that have come up lately.
Yeah,
there's been a lot of movements, that have really gotten some steam. They've been around obviously for a very long time.
Yeah.
But it feels like they've gotten some momentum. And so I know for Sarah and I, like, we're working through that as well, because it's like, what do those movements mean to you? And kind of how do you filter some of that information to your kids? Because yeah, you might be at home, but maybe they're talking to their friends, or for us, like we went out to one of the protests and joined with another family and did our social distance thing, but we jointly went out there together. And so there was some discussion going on, but again, our kids they're not so young that they don't have any clue what's going on, but they're not quite old enough to really get super deep into the weeds, but you're still having those discussions, right? You're still, and not only if you're not having those discussions, like for you, I know that your kids are younger than mine. And so maybe you're not like, hey, this is what Black Lives Matter, like you're not really breaking down the whole thing. But even if you're not, you're still working through it as a couple, right? You're still working through it as like how you work through it on your own life, and then also how you address that with your kids. If maybe it's not sitting them down and discussing what the movement is, but maybe it's like, hey, maybe we'll introduce some different kids books, you're like evaluating things. Like I know we did, like where it's like, we're evaluating, what do we have on our bookshelves? Is it something that we need to diversify a little bit? Maybe, maybe there's things that we can do that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm out protesting or I'm changing a law or a regulation or something like that. But what can I do? And kind of taking stock of that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And again, I would love to actually sit down and have a guest on that's going to actually be able to speak on this topic a lot more, somebody that's much more educated on this than we are, because we're just a couple of dads that are trying to figure out, trying to navigate and trying to figure out how to do it the right way. Which I don't know if there is a right way. I just know that there's definitely some wrong ways, right? And we're going to try not to do those. But, for us and our family, same thing ever since, George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and a lot of these movements and discussions that have opened up really from terrible things that have happened. We, mostly with my 7-year-old, because he's our oldest, but he's very much attuned to what's going on. I mean, he doesn't know everything, but I remember one of the days when my baby was very, very little, and I was sitting in my room and I flipped on the news, which I really don't do during the day ever, because we just don't have the kids watch the news with us ever. I mean, and I remember sitting down, and that was like the first day that there was like the protests going on in LA, and then there of course was everybody that started looting and the damage that was happening, and that's the thing that the news was covering, and you know, we tried to tell him that, you know, there's bad stuff that happens. Absolutely. And some people do bad things, but at the same time, like, this is also what happens when you're not heard. And that's one of the things, like, we don't know all the answers, and we definitely don't. But for instance, like my kids, I've heard lots of other dads, and again, coming from the Midwest and talking to primarily, you know, white dads, because in the Midwest there was, I came from a place, there was just a lot of white everywhere. Like that was just where we came from. And what, you know, the conversation a lot of times I've heard from a lot of parents is, you know, oh, you know, I'm colorblind to it and we don't see race. And then that's fine to an extent if that's how you want to deal with it with your kids, but we don't deal with it that way. We go to a school that is primarily minorities. So for instance, my son is in a class, an English class, that there's only 2 kids that are white kids and everybody else is a minority. So for him, it hasn't really been like, it's not uncommon to just have other races around. And you know, it's not that he doesn't see them, because our landlord is black. Our neighbors are black. Like we have friends and we know a lot of people that are black. We live in a town that is like at least quarter or more black in population, and then another quarter Hispanic. So we have a great deal of diversity, particularly where we are compared to where my wife and I came from. So for us, like, again, the conversation is usually like, even within our own home, we talk about when we think it's okay. It's okay to address someone's skin color negatively. No, absolutely not. Like, that's not okay. But is it okay to have different shades of skin color? Absolutely. Like, we have in our own family, my son, actually, really, the boys are very pasty white. Okay. They got that from dad. I am a pasty white guy. When I go in the sun, I turn red. I don't tan. Right. And that's because I come from an Irish and British background, and I was not made for the sun. Okay. I was made for cloudy days. But my wife, on the other hand, who has Italian in her, she also has some Irish, but Italian as well. She has much more like olive skin. And my daughter was born with this beautiful dark olive skin. And the difference in like our own families, we go, look, your sister came from your mom and dad, right? Mom and dad look the same, but her skin color is different from your skin color. Does that make you guys different? Yeah, kind of, but also no, because we all work the same way and we're part of the same family. And that's how we've tried to treat this. Like, if you have a friend that has darker skin color or lighter skin color, is it okay? Yeah, totally. Is it noticeable? Yeah, but it should be celebrated. And that's the way we've tried to talk about it. And honestly, for my job, it's the weird thing is like, I have to deal with skin color on a basis of skin color because I'm a cinematographer, right? My job, not only do I teach students that I have to teach them what's going on, but also just the simple fact that I have to understand how to light somebody with dark skin compared to someone with light skin. Because the way that light works on skin, I have to know that for my job. And there's no way around it. I can't go, I'm colorblind to it. No, if I'm colorblind to it, I'm a terrible cinematographer because I'm not going to do the right thing. So, you know, so that's how we try to talk about it. We try to, and, you know, again, it may not be the right way. I don't know. But the best thing we can do is we can tell him we're trying to learn just like you, and we're going to keep asking questions, and we're going to keep supporting people around us. And that's what we can do right now. And especially from our own home. Calling out the BS. Yeah, that's something that we've taught him from a young age. It's something we've taught the other kids. If somebody's doing something that's not okay, whether it's race or whether it's bullying or whether it's any of those things, and it's not okay, you can call it out, and that's okay. And even if we're doing something that's not okay and you guys see it, you guys call us out. Are we going to be happy about it at the time? No. Because we're the parents and you shouldn't be saying that to us. Right. But at the same time, look, you're keeping us honest. Right. And so that's the conversation we have around it. And, you know, it's been something like, I didn't want to sit here and have an episode of our podcast and just let this go by. I do want to be able to sit down with someone that really has more education on the subject and, you know, can help us and any of those dads that are out there that want to learn how to talk to their kids about race, if it's an uncomfortable subject for you. And it's okay that it's an uncomfortable subject because not everybody has been exposed to it. So yes, we're going to work on that in the future. As far as what I'm dealing with that with my kids, that's the conversations that I've had. I will say you said a couple things that I wanted to go back to because I wanted to ask you about the airplane one more time, because
Yeah.
I know you said you traveled and everybody seems like they're being very safe, but are people still taking their shoes off on the airplane? Like, are people still comfortable enough to take their shoes off?
I didn't see it
and relax?
personally.
Okay.
I didn't see it personally.
Very
I've definitely
question.
seen I've definitely seen photos of it,
Okay.
but I didn't see it personally. No.
Okay, because I actually, when you were talking about, I mean, I'm thinking about people wearing masks on the airlines, and I totally understand that. But I've been somebody who's actually wore a mask on a plane for a really long time because I have food allergies. So if somebody sits next to me and has some with dairy or nuts or whatever, I put the mask on, and that way, if they're eating anything and they're spitting and talking, whatever, nothing comes in my particular area. Right. So I'm a little bummed on a selfish aspect that I can't go on an airplane and wear a mask and people will just stay away from me now. Because that used to be, I would wear a mask when everybody was finding their seat, like on Southwest or something where anybody can sit anywhere. And I would sit down and then no one would come sit by me. I'd have a whole row to myself. I was like, this is great.
That guy's weird.
I love this. Totally. And I get it. But at the same time, I am glad people are taking those precautions. I'm super nervous about it. I'm super nervous about my family going to do that. But that's me. I'm a very cautious, probably too cautious because, I've dealt with anxiety my whole life too. And that's actually one of the things I was going to mention to you, with everything going on, right? With the joy of having a baby who, by the way, he's a healthy boy. He's about 2 months old now. Actually, he is 2 months old now. And he's my little chunky meatball. Like I said, I love him to death. He's amazing. Yeah. Having 4 kids in the house has been crazy, especially because when we started this whole like being married to my wife thing, I thought 2 kids max, right? And now we've definitely doubled that. So I am swimming in some deep water right now, but I'm treading in that deep water. So. But yeah, I mean, with all that going on, with all that, with having the baby, with my wife recovering from having the baby, with, adjusting and with then on top of this coronavirus and masks and all the political stuff that's going on and all the race and the movements and everything else that we're dealing with as a country, but then also within our house. I've actually had, and I will tell you, I am the one to blame for taking this 2-month hiatus. Because you, my friend, I don't know how you do it. You must be some kind of rock or something. But I have been dealing with some very hard depression. And, it's one of those things like I haven't even wanted to talk to you. And you and I do this show where we talk about, so, I mean, this is very therapeutic. And I'm like, no, I don't even want to do that because I didn't want to sit down and edit the show. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to talk to my own family. I mean, outside of the people in my house, I didn't want to talk to my parents. I would talk to nobody. I just was just kind of lost. And I told my wife, and I don't know what it is that really kind of, snapped me out of the funk. I mean, I still am dealing with it. Right. Because it's a tough thing. And there's a lot of stuff that's going on with it. There's a lot of with finance and work and everything else. And it's a scary time, not I'm scared of everything thing, but there's a lot of uncertainties. And, you've said you're a planner, and I'm lucky in a lot of ways that I'm not a planner because I don't know how I could be a planner and be able to sit through the stuff that I've sat through during all this. But I will say, one of the positives that has come from me dealing with this depression and this hard time is my wife and I have decided we are going to take time and just like get to know each other. And it may sound weird, like not like we're going on first dates again. Like I know there are a lot of people that try to rekindle their romance. We're not trying to rekindle the romance. What we're doing is we're trying to listen to each other. And this is one of the things that I don't know if we're doing it right, but I would tell you we're working our butts off trying to do it. Every married couple goes through their ups and downs. And I don't know if this is what's, think about it too. My wife has the baby. There's a long period there where we cannot be physically intimate with each other, correct? And please tell me that's true.
That is true. Yes,
okay.
very much
all right.
so.
Okay,
sorry.
thank you.
Sorry.
Because my wife said it's true, but if she's lying to me, we got problems. no, we there's times we can't be physical with each other, and that's a big part of my love language, right? So between that and everything that's going on top of it, and like not feeling connected to my wife, and then my son, the baby's been sleeping pretty well, but it's my third child. He actually has night terrors, and we have been dealing with like his night terrors. So really my job now is being up with him really every night, to an extent, to the point where I'm basically sleeping between their rooms, sitting up and leaned on their bed and on the floor, and then kind of in my room, and then kind of like, it's very sporadic. So I'm dealing with that and having a hard time sleeping, but dealing with the depression, not being able to be physically intimate with my wife. There was like a lot of pressures on top of the coronavirus and all the other worldly crap that's going on. Right. So yeah, I was just in a hole. I didn't want to talk to anybody. And then I think one day, and this is going to sound really strange, but one day I was waiting in the line for a food drive because, they're there to help you. And I have to humble myself and say, you know what, hey, we're going to go to a food drive and get some food because I just don't know how else we're going to make it. Right. And I'm at that point, and I started sending out messages to people that I just haven't talked to in a long time, just saying like, hey, you rock. Like, I don't know if you know that, but you're awesome. So like, just keep being awesome. And, so these things that like, it's not something I'm typically going to do. And it's something I forced myself to do, is I forced myself to just tell someone that they're a great person and have a good day. And in the midst of that, I told my wife it was something I was interested in. And then her and I started talking and just trying to connect in a way that we're going like, look, let's make each day count. And I know, sorry, this feels like I've just been rambling the last like probably 10 minutes here because I'm trying to figure out what's been going on with the depression and everything. But yeah, that's the thing. My wife and I have been trying to get closer through all this. I think it'd be great for us to sit down and have a show about it. I know we got to wrap up because you got to go. I got to go because I can hear my kids now. So we'll talk about this.
No, but I think I just want to make a quick point is you're definitely not alone. I mean, I have definitely felt that and shared that with Sarah. And I felt like her and I have been, especially since I've traveled out here, been off, like, because one, we're not together as much, but then there's just so much pressure on everything else that's going on. It's hard to be like, hey, let's have just like a light conversation and enjoy each other's company. It's like with these like clouds of like finances and what are we doing in the world? And there's these social things, so there's all this stuff going on. So I do think you're on the right track of opening up those conversations again and saying, hey, this feels weird. Like, do you feel weird? And it's hard to do that, right? Because you're like, okay, what if she doesn't feel weird? Is it me? And then, and I've told her like, listen, it's been very difficult for me to be like the proactive person that I feel like I am, and so I don't want you to think that you were the only reason that this hasn't been on for a couple months. Cause I was like, hey, if Grant's not down for it, man, that sounds great. It wasn't like it, like it was, I think it was more of a mutual thing that we just kind of like, we're like, hey, we're going to put a pause on this. But we both, I think in the back of our brains, we're like, we definitely want to do this. This is still like, I still, talk about it with other friends, even the people on site, and like, hey, other dads that are there, I'm kind of like chatting them up, like seeing what's going on and what they might want to, hear or talk about or those kinds of things. So I'm really glad that we, kind of like we started this podcast, right? We just said, we're doing it. Let's jump back on. Let's get back on the horse. Let's figure this out.
By the way, 2020, worst year to start a podcast ever. Yeah, awful. I mean, you think about it. We started it, and then my dog died, right? And then we had a whole conversation very early on about dealing with loss, and like that wasn't how I wanted to start it off. And then right after that, you go to Detroit, which is a whole different channel or a whole different challenge. And then, coronavirus is here and it's here to stay. And like, this has been a crazy start to this. But I will say, one, thank you for saying that, because I definitely thought it was just me, why we weren't doing the podcast. So I'm glad to hear you say that. Thanks for letting me ride and let me feel like crap. I mean, being so supportive, that's what I meant. No, dude, I'm just kidding. But really, we are at the halfway point of the year. And so, our little podcast hopefully is growing a little bit. I don't know if you know this, but we just got at 500 downloads for the
No, that's exciting.
Yeah, so I mean, I know a lot of people can just like put out an Instagram video and they've got 500 now, watches or downloads. But for us, for starting this thing in a awful time to start a podcast,
yes,
that's just about dads. I mean, like we're trying here. So we will, we got over 500 downloads now, which is great. And that just counts as far as like the audio podcast. That doesn't count Facebook video watches and YouTube. I'd have to add that up too. It's probably about 14 video. I don't know, 14 views. I know most of the downloads are probably you and I and your grandma in Oklahoma. So thanks, Grandma. Sorry about all the sex jokes and
shout out to Grandma.
But thank you for listening. But no, we got a lot to talk about. I do want to talk about, like we say, talk about movements, talk about the race stuff that's going on. I want to talk about, self-improvement and like what I was trying to get out to you when I was rambling. And how we can work on that during the coronavirus and during all this strange time. And you know what? You and I got to talk about sports because we haven't.
Yes.
And sports are back. I don't want to get into it now. I know you got to go, but sports.
Yes.
Yeah. Woo-hoo,
sports so exciting.
Yes.
Yes. I 100% want to talk about it, and I can't wait for the next one.
All right. Well, listen. Everybody that has joined us, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the continued support. And if it's your first podcast, thank you for listening to this one. Please go back and listen to any other ones. I think they're probably going to be a lot better than this one, but we're trying. Okay, we're getting back on the horse. That's what we do as dads. We're not going to give up. So if you can support us by liking wherever you're watching this video or listening to this video, if you can subscribe, if you can like, if you can share, do all that kind of stuff. Let another dad know we are here to help. We're here to try to learn and be in this together. And Steven, stay safe, man. Stay safe.
Yeah, you too, man. I can't wait till the day we can hang out again in person. What a weird concept, but
I want to kick your butt in basketball again. It's been a while. All right. Steven, stay safe. Everybody out there, thank you so much for listening to another episode of It's a Dad Thing podcast. Bye.
Bye.